Hello and welcome. In this video, we are going to look at how to let go of negative thoughts based on the teachings of the fourth way system, a path of inner development that integrates mind, emotions, and body through conscious attention. Thoughts are movements in the mind. They rise and fall, form and dissolve, often without our conscious participation. We grow up believing they are who we are, because they have been with us for as long as we can remember. But one of the first real insights on the path of inner work is to see that we are not our thoughts, and that the constant stream of commentary is not the same as the quiet awareness that can watch it. The fact that you cannot silence the stream by will alone is enough to show that it is not you. Thoughts happen automatically, like breathing or the beating of the heart, and yet we take ownership of them as though we had chosen every word and image. This is the spell that most people live under. Just like with so much in life, we are schooled into a very specific way of functioning and of understanding ourselves and the world. Our relationship with our thoughts is one such thing that we are schooled into. And isn't this interesting? We automatically assume that this process, the one we have very little control over in our normal state, is who we are. Our mood is, to a large extent, dependent on what this process is telling us. We rely on it to give us accurate information about ourselves, other people, and the world. And we allow it to control our speech and our actions. When looked upon from this perspective, does this seem wise or even sane? Furthermore, the habit of relating to our thoughts in this way is deeply ingrained. Even if we logically see how flawed this approach is, the pattern remains. As soon as we are not fully present and aware of what is happening in the moment, which, for most of us, is most of the time, we slip back into relating to our thoughts unconsciously. The good news is that, with practice, the spell can be broken. And just by observing this process, you begin to break it. The problem deepens when we look at negative thoughts specifically. These patterns are not just idle noise. They are often fed by strong emotions, which makes them feel real and urgent. A thought tied to fear or resentment has a certain weight that neutral thoughts do not. This is why the fourth way teaches that negative emotions and negative thoughts are not natural to us in the sense of being essential. They are mechanical. They arise because of the way our inner machinery has been conditioned by repetition, by early experiences, and by identification. Left unobserved, they form grooves in the mind, paths so well worn that we follow them without even noticing. The fourth way begins with seeing this clearly. It begins with self-observation. Not the kind of analysis that tries to explain where every thought and feeling comes from, but the quiet act of noticing what is here, in real time. This observation is without judgment and without interference. You simply watch the movements of your mind and the stirrings of your emotions. At first, the habit of identification will pull you back in again and again. You will find yourself swept into an argument, a daydream, or a complaint before you realize what has happened. But the moment you notice, you have already created a small space between the thought and the part of you that sees. This space is where real change begins. Without it, you remain in a state of sleep, carried by every inner current. With it, you begin to experience a new quality of attention, one that is lighter, more objective, and less entangled. Negative thoughts are sustained and reinforced by identification. Identification is the act of losing the sense of the observer and merging entirely with what is passing through the mind. You become the content of the mind, and it feels as though it is telling you the absolute truth. When you are identified, the thought feels like reality. The emotion feels justified, necessary, and even protective. When you begin to see the pattern, you also begin to see that identification is optional. The thought may still arise, but you are not required to believe it, to act on it, or to follow where it leads. In those first small moments when you manage this, something quiet and new appears. A stillness that is not the absence of thought, but the presence of awareness. Now, one of the things you will begin to see when you observe the interplay between thoughts and emotions is the strange satisfaction we take in negativity. There is a hidden attachment to these states. Anger, resentment, self-pity, they have a kind of energy that can feel alive and even satisfying for a moment. And on the flip side, choosing not to engage with these states and feed them with your speech and actions can feel uncomfortable. This is because you are going against an ingrained habit. To understand this, you need to understand that we are wired to prefer the familiar because our brains are built on efficiency and prediction. Neural pathways formed by repeated thoughts, emotions, and behaviors become deeply ingrained over time. These patterns create a sense of safety and stability because the brain recognizes and anticipates them. When you try to change a habit, you are essentially asking your brain and body to stop following these automatic routes and to build new ones. This feels uncomfortable because it disrupts the chemical and neurological balance your system has come to expect. The discomfort is not a sign that change is impossible. It is simply the body signaling that you are stepping into the unknown, away from what it recognizes as safe and predictable. To see this clearly, without judgment, is one of the most important steps in loosening the negative thought's grip. Observation reveals the quiet pleasure we take in rehearsing an argument or revisiting an old wound. Once you see that pleasure, you have the choice to withdraw your attention. What happens when you begin to withdraw your attention is subtle but real. The thought or emotion may still surge up, but it no longer finds the same fuel. It weakens, and in its place, there is a stillness that allows something higher to come through. The fourth way teachings do not ask you to replace negative thoughts with artificial positivity. They ask you to stop wasting energy in mechanical reactions so that this energy can be used for something finer, something more conscious. Over time, this quiet practice begins to change your inner landscape. At first, the changes are small and easy to overlook. A moment of calm where there would have been agitation, a brief pause before a familiar reaction. But these small shifts accumulate. They build a new kind of inner strength, one that is not based on willpower in the ordinary sense, but on a steady clarity that grows as identification loosens. Negative thoughts are also tied to what the fourth way calls negative imagination. This is the tendency to build elaborate inner stories about the past, about the future, about what others think or might do. These stories are almost always tinged with fear, resentment, or self-blame. They are compelling because they feel vivid and true, but when you look at them closely, you see that they are nothing more than moving pictures projected by the mind. By observing this process, you begin to recognize that these pictures are not reality. They are just impressions, triggered automatically, and they lose their power when you stop merging with them. The same mechanism that sustains negative states can also sustain positive ones. When attention and emotion move together, they form a loop, a current that grows stronger the longer it is maintained. When attention is placed on gratitude, clarity, or simple presence, that current builds in the same way that negative states build when we dwell on fear or anger. The difference is that positive currents do not drain energy. They harmonize and gather it. This is why it is so important to learn how to direct attention consciously, rather than letting it be pulled wherever mechanical associations lead it. It's important to emphasize that this is not about putting on those famous rose-colored glasses. This is about understanding that we amplify that which we focus on. If we focus on the negative, we will prime ourselves to see more of it, and it will appear bigger since it takes up more space in our minds. And the same goes for the positive. We can live off a positive experience for a long time, or allow it to slip out of our memory to be replaced by something negative the moment that it's over. As touched upon, gratitude is one of the simplest and most effective ways to shift attention. This is not the forced gratitude of repeating words without meaning, but a quiet turning toward what is already present and good. The mind is conditioned by evolution to look for danger, to prioritize what is wrong or threatening. This served us well in a world where survival depended on constant vigilance. But today, that same conditioning keeps us in a state of low-grade fear and negativity. This is something worth pondering, as we are at a point in our evolution where what kept our species alive for the entirety of its known history is now threatening to keep us in unwanted, unfulfilling life circumstances. Consciously turning attention toward what is right and whole begins to balance this habit of looking for what is wrong and threatening. It does not mean ignoring difficulty. It means refusing to live entirely inside of it. It's important to recognize that none of this work happens overnight. As mentioned before, the patterns that generate negative thoughts and emotions are deep and automatic, and they will continue to arise as long as you live in a mechanical way. But every moment of observation, every small act of non-identification, builds something in you that is real. Even when you fail, if you can observe the failure without judgment, you are still learning. The fourth way teaches that failure, when observed consciously, becomes material for understanding. There will be times when you are in the middle of a strong negative state, and nothing you do seems to touch it. In those moments, the task is not to fight, but to witness. You can remind yourself that the state will pass, that it is not who you are, that you are simply watching an old mechanism run its course. This alone is an act of separation, and it prevents you from feeding the state further. You are no longer passively allowing your mind to dictate your inner state and your behavior without questioning it. When you make the effort to return to yourself in the present moment, to sense your body, to feel the quiet fact of your own presence, something shifts. The noise of the mind is still there, but it is not the whole of your experience anymore. There is a quiet observer that does not move, and from that place, thoughts and emotions lose much of their power to carry you away. The fourth way teaches that attention is our most precious resource. Wherever attention goes, energy follows. Most of the time, our attention is scattered, caught in mechanical loops of thought and emotion, feeding reactions that go nowhere. By learning to hold attention on the act of observing, not straining, not analyzing, simply observing, we begin to reclaim that energy. And with time, this reclaimed energy becomes available for real inner growth. It is also important to recognize that you cannot think your way out of strong emotions. Thoughts move too slowly, and emotions are too immediate. When a negative state is active, reasoning rarely dissolves it. The real work happens before the state takes hold, when you are calm enough to study your patterns. In quiet moments, you can see what triggers your reactions, how identification happens, and what it feels like just before you lose the thread of observation. With this knowledge, you become less likely to be taken by surprise. With practice, there comes a sense of inner stability that is not dependent on external circumstances. The world will continue to move as it always has, full of unpredictability and change, but your inner reactions will no longer run unchecked. There will still be moments of negativity, but they will be shorter, lighter, less convincing. You will begin to see that what happens outside you is far less important than how you meet it inside. As stated earlier, this is not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be positive. It is about clarity. It is about becoming conscious in the middle of the automatic reactions that have run your life for so long. When you see a negative thought arise, you do not need to fight it or replace it. You can simply see it and understand that it is not telling you the whole truth about your experience. In this act of seeing from a place of detachment, you are no longer entirely caught in it. Over time, this simple act of observation transforms your relationship with the mind and consequently with the world. The work of freeing yourself from negative thoughts is steady and often slow. It requires patience and persistence. There will be days when you feel clear and centered, and days when you feel lost in old patterns. Both are part of the process. What matters is the continued effort to observe and to return again and again to the quiet witness within. As this practice deepens, you may notice moments when the mind falls silent on its own. These moments are not something you create. They happen naturally when identification loosens and energy is no longer being wasted on negativity. In that quiet, you begin to sense a different quality of awareness, one that is still, spacious, and unshaken by the movements of thought. This is what the work points to when it speaks of real freedom. Freedom is not the absence of thought, but the absence of compulsion. It is the ability to watch the movements of the mind without being moved by them. From this place, you begin to act with intention rather than reaction. You begin to live from a center that is steady and clear, even when the surface of life is in motion. Negative thoughts will still arise. They are part of the human machine, but they will not have the same power to define you. You will see them, you will understand their patterns, you will no longer unquestionably believe them, and you will have the quiet strength to let them pass. And in that seeing, in that quiet allowing, the energy that was once lost in mechanical reactions becomes available for something higher, something more conscious, something that moves you toward the possibility of becoming truly awake. In summary, letting go of negative thoughts begins with seeing that you are not your thoughts. Through self-observation without judgment, you create space between awareness and the automatic patterns of the mind. Negative states lose their grip as identification loosens, and the energy once tied up in mechanical reactions becomes available for conscious growth. This process is steady and often uncomfortable because the brain prefers the familiar, but with patience and practice, attention stabilizes, inner clarity grows, and reactions lose their power. In this quiet space of awareness, freedom is not the absence of thought, but the absence of being compelled by it. What you may begin to discern here is that the most crucial step is to see your habitual thought processes, how they function, and how they affect your life clearly. Just by shedding the light of awareness upon what was previously hidden, you begin to change it. This can be seen in a very real, tangible sense, as you automatically begin to respond differently to something you are aware of, as opposed to something that continues to run unconsciously on autopilot. Over time, this steady observation reshapes the inner landscape. You begin to live more naturally from the stillness beneath the noise of the mind, the part of you that is not pulled around by every passing thought or emotion. From that stillness, life takes on a different quality. It moves as it always has, unpredictable, full of challenges and change. But your relationship to it shifts. There is more space, more clarity, and a deeper sense of freedom in how you meet each moment. This work is not about striving to control the mind or to eliminate thought. It is about remembering that you are infinitely more than the patterns that play out within you, and that life is more than this struggle with an incomprehensible reality. When you see this, even for a brief moment, you begin to experience what the fourth way calls real freedom. The freedom to live consciously, to act from intention rather than reaction, and to rest in the quiet awareness that is always here, steady and unshaken, no matter what thoughts arise. Interestingly enough, this freedom has always been there between the noise. This freedom is the quiet, unchanging awareness that we have been talking about throughout the video. This awareness is eternal, and it is the truth of who you are, behind the smoke and mirrors of chaotic, ever-changing movement, noise, and habitual, reactive, internal and external responses. If you want to learn more about how thoughts work, we have a whole video about it available on the end screen right now, together with a playlist with our other videos on the fourth way, and one specific video about self-observation and intentional thinking as taught within the fourth way. You've now reached the end of the video. Remember to like and subscribe, and check out the description and comment section to see other things that we do. Thank you for your time.